Welcome to the Sports Science Dudes. I'm your host, Dr. Jose Antonio. And with me today is Elliot Jenkins. He is a Kiwi physiologist from, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Christchurch. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one. Yeah,
Christchurch, New Zealand. He completed his undergrad degree at the University of Otago, or is it Otago?
Otago. Nailed
Otago,
it.
okay, with Professor Jim Cotter before moving to the UK to start a PhD at Cardiff Metropolitan University with Professor Mike Stembridge. His work sits at the intersection of exercise and environmental physiology, exploring how heat and altitude influence human performance. And sort of what got me peaked with your bio is that you're interested in altitude, but you're in the UK, which has like no altitude.
Yeah, there's I don't think there's any mountains above 1,000 meters here. But back home in New Zealand, we have a few more peaks above that, above that number.
Do you suspect you'll be going back to New Zealand when you finish your PhD?
Long term, I'm thinking yes, but maybe there's a postdoc somewhere kind of in between in the time being.
I know there's a lot of postdoc availabilities in the US, so that might be something for you to consider. And if you're interested in altitude, we got the Rocky Mountains, which
Yeah, yeah.
are
One of
quite
my good
nice.
buddies works in Flagstaff, like Arizona as well. So I know they've got a big kind of altitude community there as well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area, absolutely beautiful area. Now, before we start talking about your paper, I do want to mention to the audience, since let me just pull it up real quick. The title of your paper is Long-Term Passive Heat Acclimation Enhances Maximal Oxygen Consumption via Hematological and Cardiac Adaptation in Endurance Runners. Obviously, for the endurance world, this is interesting. But before I get to that, I'm always interested in how you decided to pursue a PhD, because when I talk to, recently minted PhDs and how they made that decision, it's all completely different versus like, medical school. Well, my dad was a doctor, so I thought I'd be a doctor, that kind of thing. So how did you come to the decision of, yes, I want to pursue a PhD, and yes, in this particular area?
Yeah, so I think back when I was an undergrad student, I had this kind of goal in mind of just working in high performance sport. I wanted to I wasn't good enough to be an athlete myself and kind of compete in that world, but if I could get a job working in the high performance kind of space, then that'd be something I could see a lot of value and kind of enjoyment in. But it was during my undergrad that I got involved in a heat acclimation study at the time as a participant. And in doing that study, that's when I met my who would go on to be my supervisor, and Jim Cotter. And he really kind of just hooked me on research, kind of asking these questions that people may or may not have thought about before, but then kind of using that research to then inform what happens kind of in the high performance world, right? So did my undergrad and kind of a year of postgraduate research with Jim, and then during after that point, I wanted to do some travel as well. So I'd planned to do a kind of gap year in the year of 2020, which we all know
Yeah.
um, couldn't go ahead for obvious reasons. So went back to the drawing board, and then kind of when everything with COVID cleared up, I had a British passport just by virtue of being born in the UK, despite being brought up in New Zealand. And Jim had worked with my now supervisor Mike previously, and they put me in touch, and yeah, kind of just never looked back from the kind of research perspective.
So where are you now in your doctoral studies?
I've been telling people I'm one year out from completing my PhD,
Yeah,
which
doctoral
I think
students they always hate that question. It's
yeah
like, well, when are you going to be done? And it's like, I'll be done when I'm done. But yeah, it's a long process. It's an endurance event. It's not really a sprint. That's for damn sure.
no,
Um,
absolutely not.
is this part of your dissertation, or this was just a fun project?
Yes. Yeah, this was study number one.
Ah,
So two more to come in this space, but this was the one that has definitely seen the most work go into it, kind of a big long intervention. My next two studies won't be this time intensive.
No, this is what I love about this study is that one, you're measuring a lot of things, but two, there's a pragmatic application to it. And
Mm.
I assume you're an endurance athlete yourself.
Yes, keen runner. Yeah.
Okay, so this has personal interest to you, obviously. My question is this: if you look at in the US, because there's so many people who are on social media and talking about exercise and fitness, the last 4 or 5 years has been this barrage of cold water immersion. You gotta get a cold tub and just sit in a tub of ice filled with water. And frankly, I've never been impressed with the data on cold water immersion. And frankly,
Mm.
part of the reason my wife and I moved to Florida is we like hot weather. We do not want to purposely sit in a tub of cold water. We want to avoid cold at all costs.
Mm.
However, the argument always made against cold water immersion is I've never seen any direct effect on performance. Even though people claim you perform better, there's none. Um,
Mm.
some of my friends, they do it because they say they feel less sore. Okay, maybe decreases delayed onset muscle soreness. However, what piqued me about this is that the change in max VO2 is interesting because
Mm.
these were trained runners, right? These were not,
Yep.
slow pokes. So I guess the question is, you're thinking about this before you do the project. There's some thought process in your head whereby you decide, well, maybe there's something to passive heat exposure that might improve performance or indirect measures of performance. So walk us through that process.
Yeah. So, like I said, my kind of experience during my undergrad was I participated in just what was a 1 week long heat acclimation intervention, and got the kind of the bug to research heat a bit more. So when I was thinking of what to investigate during my PhD, I came across these studies by Carsten Lumby, who has gone on to show in 4 or 5 studies now that exercise in the heat, so active heat acclimation, for over the course of 5 weeks can improve or increase hemoglobin mass and improve exercise performance and VO2 max. Um, and at that point, it just seemed like kind of connected the dots for me in terms of it was being a no-brainer of, okay, but do you need to be exercising in the heat? Like I knew from my own experience during that study I participated in that exercising in the heat's hard. Like it adds to your load. It uh, slows, like decreases the intensity you can operate at. It's not overly comfortable. It kind of makes me compromise other training outside of that one heat acclimation
Mhm.
session. So I thought, okay, can we utilize a passive mode of heat acclimation, and can we get the same benefits?
Yeah, well, obviously living in South Florida, it's hot all year. So
Yeah.
what's interesting is when endurance athletes compete up north, northern part of US where it's colder, um, they do a lot better in terms of times just because there's no heat stress. And then vice versa, when cold weather runners come down to South Florida, they do very poorly because they just
Yeah, they don't.
the heat kills them. Your study didn't address this, but if you were to compare, get someone who lives in the northern parts of the United States where it's cold, they train the way they train, but they also sit passively in a hot tub. Would that
Mm,
be, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or just speculate, would that be the equivalent of someone in South Florida just training in the heat? Is that
mm.
sort of the goal you're trying to get to?
Yeah, so I guess your question's more around the kind of traditional or what we typically consider traditional heat acclimation outcomes, where you intentionally exercise in the heat or you sit in a hot bath so that when you come to compete in hotter environments, you're better prepared. So
Yeah.
looking at adaptations like a decreased resting core temperature and increased sweat rate, your thermal tolerance is improved. And that has been shown from a passive heat perspective. I think the one study that's coming to mind is post-exercise hot water immersion being this kind of complete or a more effective method to induce a more complete kind of heat acclimation profile, so that when you come to exercise in the heat, you're kind of better adapted.
So, you had mentioned post-exercise heat. immersion might be the best, I guess, protocol for this?
Mm.
Is that because, well, you're hot to begin with, now you're inducing more heat stress?
Yeah, I don't, that's just off the back of this study that I've read in terms of yeah, you're already raising your core temperature via exercise. Obviously, it depends on kind of the ambient temperatures you're working in, but so even if you just complete a 30-minute easy run or easy bike ride, you're going to have metabolically induced increases in your core temperature, whereby then
Interesting.
if you sit in a hot bath after that, you're prolonging that increase without necessarily having to raise it from baseline.
Now, remind me, refresh my memory in terms of your data. You found, I believe, an increase in is it hemoglobin, and was it also hematocrit? I'm not sure.
Hematocrit follows a kind of a phasic response where initially after 1 to 2 weeks of heating, you get an increase in plasma volume, so hematocrit
Mhm.
decreases, after which point what we believe to be your crit meter is sensing that decrease in hematocrit,
Mhm.
which then causes an increase in your red blood cell volume. So hematocrit actually pre to post is exactly the same, but overall blood volume and hemoglobin mass has increased.
So blood volume goes up, which ironically, I mean, isn't that, and you'll have to refresh my memory with endurance training adaptations. When you get untrained people who start to endurance train, is the blood volume increase or plasma volume increase one of the initial adaptations?
Yeah, so plasma volume increased definitely. It's we know that plasma volume fluctuations are part of the acute response to exercise. So during exercise, you undergo plasma volume contraction. Subsequent to that, you have an overshoot or a plasma volume expansion.
Now,
Over
what's
time, in an untrained cohort, yeah, like you say, that plasma volume will increase and your overall blood volume will increase.
now what's the mechanism for getting that increase in red cells from heat exposure?
Yeah, so this we're not entirely sure of yet. My study can kind of partly address that question, but what our data indicates is what's being termed as the crypt meter hypothesis, where within your kidneys, a sensor called what's being called the crypt meter recognizes or measures your hematocrit, and when it gets too low, it suggests to your kidneys to start increasing their EPO synthesis to increase your red blood cells. So after 1 to 2 weeks of heating, we've got this big plasma volume expansion. Your crypt meter is saying, "Hey, we need to increase our red blood cell volume to get our hematocrit back up to kind of an optimal set point."
Interesting. Now, looking at your max VO2 data, and I like that you put individual data points here because I noticed with max VO2, I think the control, basically nothing. I mean, slight up, slight down, no change, but everyone when they were exposed to heat, it looks like one, two, everyone improved except looks like one person did not.
Mm.
Um, which is interesting. Do you think based on actually some of these guys have a very high max VO2. What kind of
Mm.
athletes were these? I mean, there's a guy here with 82. Holy jeez.
Yeah, one of our participants is a 2 hour 12 marathoner.
Wow.
So it was really cool to get kind of someone that elite through the study. So most people were sitting around that mid 60s VO2 max kind of number, so 664, 65-ish. And then yeah, we had one particularly elite runner.
Now, what do you think this would translate to if, let's say, they run a 5K or a 10K in
Mm.
terms of seconds off? Because that's a lot of runners or even cyclists would say, well, what's that mean in terms of seconds? I mean, you'd have to guess because you didn't do a time trial, but what would you think?
Mm. Um, we're probably in the realm of 2 to 4%, I would say, maybe slightly less than that in terms of a performance benefit. Our VO2 max numbers increased by 2.7 absolute, which I think equated to about 4% from 4% increase from pre to post intervention. The only thing we can point to from an actual speed perspective, because we didn't get people to do a 5K before and after.
Right.
The only thing we can point to is that the treadmill speed at VO2 max increased by almost a full kilometer an hour from pre to post intervention. So the speed that people were running at when they were maxing out is faster. So that itself would definitely help you in the long run of a distance running event.
I mean, that's pretty amazing, actually. I
Yeah.
mean, were you surprised that they improved that much?
Yeah, like definitely I had faith that this would work from the get-go. I knew we would see, well, I say knew. I was confident we would see increases in hemoglobin mass. I was somewhat surprised by the increase in left ventricular end-diastolic volume and kind of the cardiac adaptations.
Actually,
Um,
let me stop you there. Explain that because a lot of the audience, they're not familiar with cardiac physiology. Explain the importance of that.
So when we talk about left ventricular end-diastolic volume, we're talking about the size of the chamber of your heart when it's at its biggest. So when it's just finished filling, so you've got a filling phase and a kind of an ejection phase during every heartbeat. The left ventricular end-diastolic volume is essentially, yeah, when your heart is the biggest. You've just had the influx of blood from your left atrium. Your left ventricle is as big as it's going to be. It's ready to shoot all that blood out into the rest of your body throughout your aorta. So having a bigger heart allows you to pump more blood out per beat, essentially, and that's more oxygen being carried around to your working muscles. So if you can effectively increase your oxygen delivery by way of increasing that kind of stroke volume, it's going to serve you well kind of for exercise and maximal exercise.
And that end diastolic volume is a function of blood volume since blood volume went
Yeah,
up. Right?
yeah.
Interesting. Now let me ask you this. Living in South Florida, I'm exposed primarily to endurance athletes. My wife's a competitive cyclist. I know a lot of duathletes and triathletes, but my main sport, the one I say I compete in it, I guess I compete in the masters level, but is outrigger canoeing and stand-up paddling, which are sort of weird endurance sports. They're not like
Mm,
running. I guess they're closer to rowing,
mm,
where your body weight is supported, so you don't have issues per se with a heavier body weight as long as you can produce power. So my question is this: training in South Florida, it's hot all year. I mean, oddly enough, we think it's kind of cool now, which if you can do the conversion to Celsius, it's about 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like, wow, it's kind of cool out, which I think
mm.
to most Europeans are like, wow, it's kind of hot out. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but my question
Definitely
is
the
this.
UK right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we train outdoors all year. So we're always exposed to heat while training.
Mm.
What do you think adding more heat, like because we're always hot, to be honest. Now we're adding more heat. We do passive heat exposure, hot water immersion. Theoretically, that should help as well, right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's something that the current data can't really give any kind of extra point to because
Right.
every lab that's done these studies, I say every lab, that's only three that I'm aware of, including
Yeah.
our own. We're based in pretty cool climates. It's us
Right.
in the UK. Our summers can get as hot as low 20 degrees. Sorry to the American audience who only knows Fahrenheit. Um,
That's
but
cold.
it's not particularly hot. And then Carsten Lundby's lab is in Scandinavia, so even colder than where we are. It's very it's in places where even in the summer we're probably not seeing temperatures as hot as you have in Florida in the winter. Um, so whether you'd see these same adaptations in people who do train in heat all year round is a really good question and something I don't think we have enough data to be able to say outright yet.
Well, here's more of a pragmatic question because athletes will try things before a lot of times before there's data. Would there be any downside to passive heat exposure or hot water immersion in Florida where it's hot all year? You're an endurance athlete, you train, you're doing all the right things, you eat well. You're like, what do you know? I'm going to buy a hot tub. And to sit in it, I think your protocol was 5 times a week, 45 minutes. Is that
That's the
correct?
one. Yep.
If I added that to my training, would there be a downside to it? Or is it's either has no effect or a possible upside?
I haven't observed a downside yet. Kind of in all of our participants, one thing that we also did throughout the study was we got general perceptual well-being scores, kind of by virtue of asking people about their muscle fatigue, their overall kind of training stress, their feelings of soreness, like how tired they are, and between across both conditions, so during the hot water immersion and the control, there was no difference in those kind of perceptual scores. So people felt the same whether they were adding an extra, like say
Okay.
45 minutes of hot water immersion to their training versus no, just kind of the control conditions. So not doing those things. Um, so it's not affecting them from a perceptual standpoint. You are
Right.
getting these massive benefits. The only thing is kind of time, how time consuming it is. Um, there
Yeah.
are, I guess we might come to this, but there are potential risks involved. 45 minutes in a 40-degree hot bath is a long time. Um, and what happens during that time is your blood vessels vasodilate. You send a lot of blood to your skin to try to keep you cool. When you come to hop out of the bath, if you immediately stand up and try to stand up too quickly, your brain, which hasn't had as much kind of blood flow, wants to send a signal for you to get back to being horizontal as quickly as possible. So
Right.
the way it does that is by essentially making you fall over, or you might feel dizzy, you might um, kind of black out, and it's called heat syncope.
Did that happen with any of your study subjects?
We definitely had people who were dizzy. We were pretty strict around a kind of gradual exit from the tub. So sitting on the side of the bath for a good 5 minutes before then drying yourself off and moving to stand and kind of walk around. Um, but yeah, anecdotally, I've heard of a lot of people kind of forcing the issue a bit too quickly and then either slipping because it's the hopping out of
Right.
water, or yeah, kind of having this orthostatic intolerance and going down.
Would you not recommend it for those with low blood pressure? Because we've had, I mean, in our lab, just as a matter of just being, thorough with athletes, a lot of times we'll just measure blood pressure. And a lot of female athletes, at least at the college level in the US, it's not uncommon for it to be 90 over 60,
Mhm.
100 over 70. I mean, low, definitely a lot lower than males. What concerns would you have for someone like that?
Yeah, I'd just be extremely cautious. I think um, athlete kind of monitoring is hugely important. I would never suggest for anyone to do this unsupervised. Um, it's just something you want to know that someone's kind of watching out for you as you kind of sit in these environments. And for someone who was hypertensive to begin with, I'd suggest taking it extremely easy. Don't at all go for 45 minutes,
Right.
or acquire a bit more tolerance as you get on. But the piece around having a slow and kind of steady exit is more important for that population.
Okay. Pragmatic question. Does it have to be 45 minutes? Could it be less? That's number one.
Yep.
104 Celsius, 104 Celsius, no, 104 Fahrenheit or 40 Celsius. Can it be
Yep.
lower than that? Or that's sort of the threshold. You have to be 45 minutes, 5 times a week at 40 degrees Celsius.
Yeah. So your first question around 45 minutes, does it have to be that long? I would say no. I'd say we don't know super well about dose response yet, but I would say 45 minutes is probably at the longer end. I think you could probably see benefit from 30 minutes, doing this five times a week, 30 minutes a day, or even drop into 3 or 4 times a week. It's
Mm-hmm.
if you're a serious athlete, this should be about supplementing your training. It's not as a replacement of training. It's there to serve to accentuate your already strong training stimulus. And if that means you can only fit in 3 or 4 heat sessions a week, then that's great. Not getting to 5 isn't gonna hurt you.
And temperature?
And then the temperature point. We started people at 40 degrees, so 104 and degrees Fahrenheit, and then we kind of titrated, or we set temperature for the remaining weeks, kind of basing it on thermal tolerance, so thermal discomfort, should I say? So how people were feeling in the tub, and because you require this thermal tolerance with typical heat acclimation, that meant we got up to almost 42 degrees by the end of the 5 weeks, or roughly 107, 108 degrees Fahrenheit, I want to say. So I would
Oh,
say
that's hot. That's
you
really
can,
hot.
yeah, it did get hot for people. I would say start at what feels like you can sit in it comfortably for the first 10 minutes, and then it might
Mhm.
start to feel uncomfortable. If you don't get beyond 15, 20 minutes the first time you do it at that temperature, that's cool. You hop out, come back the next day, you'll have more tolerance the next time you go for it. And you'll be able to kind of extend that time out. I'd say you definitely want to be at least above core temperature. Our resting core temperature is about 37 degrees. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what what that is in degrees Fahrenheit, but you want it to be higher than core temperature, and then I would say to keep it as a progressive stimulus, slowly dial up that temperature as you go. Um, don't
And
at all feel like you have to go above 42 degrees, because it was hot for people.
that is hot. So 45 minutes is sort of at the top end. You can maybe drop it to half hour, 3 to 4 times
Mm.
a week. Um, do you have anyone who would want to do any of these athletes who said, I want to do this more than 45 minutes? And is there a diminishing return, or is there no return after, 5 times a week, 45 minutes?
The people were definitely not asking for more.
Oh,
Shall
okay.
I say? It was I was definitely in the first instance, I was having to really try and manage people's kind of feelings around wanting to hop out a bit early, which we were fine with. We knew they would develop that tolerance. But I guess the nice thing about doing these heat sessions in a bath is you have a lot of behavioral changes that you can do to get yourself through 45 minutes. So taking more of your body out of the water, essentially, just to get yourself a bit cooler. But all you need these things to get yourself to that 45-minute mark.
How much how much water
The
would you recommend while sitting here? Or because obviously the heat stress is less the more you drink, but
Yeah. So we gave people 500 ml of water across the 45 minutes. So that being the upper limit. People could drink less if they wanted to. I don't think many people did. Everyone always had the 500 ml. And the reason why we capped it at 500 ml was because there's research to suggest that dehydration additively enhances your plasma volume expansion. So
okay.
if you lose more fluid across the 45 minutes, that will give you bigger bang for your buck in terms of the resulting plasma volume expansion 24 hours afterwards, say. Um, so we wanted to make sure people were finishing the sessions dehydrated without making it impossible for them to get through the sessions itself. So that kind of
Right.
500 mil mark ended up working quite well. But in that, I would say 500 mil is also just a number we've pulled out of a kind of necessity. Drink to thirst.
Hmm.
If you're thirsty, drink. Don't drink more than you have to. But yeah, if you need to get yourself through those sessions, have some nice cold water nearby.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Just a few more, and then we could wrap this up. You had one female subject, 9 male subjects, and I know you can't
Yeah.
really answer this based on a N of one, but would you expect any sex differences in terms of the adaptive
Not
response?
not based on the findings of, so I've mentioned Carson Lumbey's studies already. Here's one that has looked at sex differences in long-term heat training studies, and found there wasn't any. But it's worth, I guess, the caveat of that is they were doing exercise in the heat and not the passive approach like we did. So can't really speak to it too much on our own data, like you say. There is another paper that's looked at acutely, kind of after following one hot bath, looking at sex differences and the EPO response to a one session at 40 degrees, 45 minutes. And they do see a sex difference, that and kind of the EPO response to that one bath. But yeah, whether that then translates to across the 5 weeks, we don't know. So it's still a question that's up in the air, and unfortunately, one we can't answer at this stage.
Interesting. Final question. It's really more for you to speculate. Not so much the differences between hot water and cold water immersion, but there are a lot of individuals, at least in the US, that basically do hot cold therapy. They'll get in a hot tub, and they'll get in the cold tub, and they'll just sort of flip back and forth. I personally just find it painful, so I don't do it. So what would be the adaptive response to sort of this extreme of hot and cold immersion? What do you think would happen, or nothing happens?
I probably can't speak to that from a long-term basis. I know that the people do it for recovery, right? That they want it to let their muscles feel good. And I think I agree with you, kind of the things you said off the top of the show in terms of I've not been convinced by any of the cold water immersion data that's come out, and I guess that includes contrast therapy. Or I've not seen anything that suggests contrast therapy is any better than just hot water immersion on its own.
Right.
So I can't give any kind of additional thought to or credence to contrast therapy as a mode of effective recovery. I actually think I saw a paper in the Journal of Physiology which suggests that hot water immersion is more effective for muscle recovery after kind of simulated musculoskeletal injury than cold water immersion. So I think more and more of the data is backing heat over cold from a acute recovery perspective, and now from a kind of long-term adaptation response as well.
There's certainly an irony to that, considering how popular cold water immersion has become.
Yeah.
And anyone who's ever sat in a hot tub knows that it just feels a lot better. Even if it's really hot, it still feels better. So,
yeah.
Well, Elliot, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want to remind everyone who loves science. I mean, this is actually, the science is great, pragmatic application. It's your study was published in the Journal of Physiology. Again, long-term passive heat acclimation enhances maximal oxygen consumption via hematological and cardiac adaptation in endurance runners. I don't know if are you on social media? Do you have a X account or Instagram?
You can follow my upcoming research. I'm on ResearchGate, just Elliot Jenkins. I'm also on Twitter or X, EJ Jenkins. You can find me on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been really eye-opening, and I think a lot of people will, they're going to be bugging you about this study because the data is cool, and I applaud you. This is actually one of the better PhD student studies I have ever seen. So, congrats on that. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.